Thank you for joining us. My name is Gord Lawn. It's a pleasure to have back with me again this morning Charles Hugh Smith, a well-recognized publisher and author on the web and publisher of the website of2minds.com. Welcome back, Charles.
Thank you, Gordon. Always a pleasure. We have a big topic today.
I want to jump right in. We're going to talk about robotics, but we're going to talk about robotics, and I'm really looking for some of your feedback too. But we're going to talk about robotics based on the work that we've been doing, Charles, for I guess a couple of years now on the changing nature of work and what's going on in the retail industry. And because we could talk about robotics right across the board, all industries, but because we've done a fair bit of discussion on retail, and I'd refer our viewers back to some of these videos where we've talked about the massive changes that are coming because of the overstored nature, what's happening with malls, what's happening with department stores and the big box and this downsizing that will happen right through to commercial real estate. So we'll show some of the technology as it applies in robotics. I have up a slide here of the agenda. Hopefully we'll be able to touch on some of these subjects as we go through. But you see the slide I have up here is where we've talked about the third wave that's coming. And the first wave, and Charles, I'm really relating this to the Northeast where I saw job changes. We were a big technology center for years in computer communications before the dot-com implosion, and a lot of the dot-coms are right here in this area. Yes, they're all gone. They're all literally all gone. They're just gone, period. Hundreds of thousands of people at DEC and Wang and Data General and Prime, and I can go on and on, gone. But what happened after that is we had a big buildup in stores, but a lot of them went into housing. They were into mortgage brokers, selling houses, building houses, et cetera, et cetera. Then we had the crash in 2000, financial crisis, which stemmed from mortgages and the housing. And next thing I found, all those people, a lot of them I was running into at Home Depot and various stores, they moved to retail to get jobs. Lower and lower paying jobs, tougher to make a go of it, but literally no choice. And my concern with the overbuilding that I've seen all along the East Coast is the next wave is coming to retail. And are you seeing the same? Did you see the same thing on the West Coast, closer to the Silicon Valley?
Right. Certainly there's, as you say, the overbuilding of retail and commercial space that we mentioned. And I think your key point here that we're going to focus on is that throughout the past roughly 150 years, as industrial societies move from agricultural and rural to urban and industrial, there was always a new source of millions of jobs, right? In other words, the people left the farm, they went to the factory, right? Then they left the factory, they became telephone operators and the whole, communications and radio and all that. Well, now we've finally reached a point where there is no other source arising. All we're seeing is the loss of millions of jobs, and there is no new industry that's going to hire millions of people. And I've often mentioned, just as one example, we look back at these large companies that you mentioned. They used to have 100,000 employees or 200,000, right? Well, now you look at Facebook, about 14,000 employees. Apple, 30,000, at least domestically. Google, 25,000. These huge companies that dominate their sectors now hire. They employ maybe 10% of the number that the large dominant companies used to, and that's an example of automation. And so when we get into retail, what we're really talking about is there was a lot of jobs in retail for decades, and now those jobs are going to go away, and we don't see anything else on the horizon that's going to replace that. There's no other source of 5 million new jobs. And that's the problem.
And we've reached, and we'll show charts on that, we've reached critical mass with the advent of robotics and this technology. And by critical mass, we're now with the internet, cloud computing, the courses in university that are focused on robotic. Critical mass means it's exploding and advancing faster than ever. and therefore consuming more and more of the industries. And it's really about cost avoidance. Companies today, it gets into your points about financialization of the economy, Charles. Today with financialization, it's about financial engineering and the bottom line and reducing costs. Very little is about risk taking for new industries. The days of Carnegie betting his whole future on a concept called steel are gone. Vanderbilt building it on railroads and betting everything are gone. And they created hundreds and hundreds, millions of new jobs because they created industries. Companies don't take those kind of monumental risks anymore. They just don't. They take minor steps or they work at cost improvement. Other than maybe a Tesla or something, I find very few, and I'm talking about not their cars as much as their solar panels and this sort of thing, taking these huge, massive risks that create new industries. JP Morgan with the electrical grids that they bet on. So none of these breakaway technologies that create big jobs. And I have up this job on robotic, or a grid on robotic advancements, and all of the elements of what a human brings to the work have been automated. That is facial recognition, hearing, speaking, feeling. But the big is the combination of that which gives dexterity, so that a body can move something or make adjustment to it, has been really, really powerful. And we're there with a lot of that technology, but it's more. We're now putting synthesis into that whole process, where intelligence coming from the internet into these bodies can actually, through artificial intelligence, can make that dexterity and human qualities to another advancement. That's where we are with robotics. And there's another wave after that. But let me just show you some of the obvious things that we're seeing as we go through. In retail, the kiosks and vending devices, right? The interface between the human and the product within the store is changing. And I've seen so many. I have up here just a couple. But the whole idea here is there's no intervention, but at the same time you're getting more information, more availability, and you can pick it up right there in the store and have it serviced to you. Or in some of these cases, you'll have it delivered to you not long after you get home. If Amazon has its way, it'll be delivered same day service, not next day service. Are you seeing this in the stores on the West Coast?
Yes, absolutely. And it's interesting, and we were just speaking before we started recording that Jeff Bezos of Amazon just purchased Whole Foods, which its reputation is largely based on a lot of personal customer service. In other words, they're very well staffed, and their staff is well trained, and there's a lot of people in their stores that you can go ask. And so we were talking about how that high cost structure is maybe unsustainable going forward.
The fact he's buying Whole Foods is a statement that it's not about next day service, it's about same day. That's where he's going, with an ability to deliver with drones and other technologies that he's now clearly advancing to, because food is being such a perishable item. And we have different services now where you can order online. Peapod is an example that comes to mind here in the Northeast that delivers food, and I'm seeing more and more of those trucks on the road. But there's going to be other techniques that he has in mind. But he's revolutionizing the delivery system and the infrastructure of computing that's behind it. And he is now bigger, as everybody knows. Amazon's bigger than Walmart, Kohl's, Targets, and we can put them all together on a market cap, which means he's got the critical mass of financing today, the ability to buy. And it was interesting on buying Whole Foods. Amazon, you'd think Whole Food stock is up. It is up to $8 here immediately, but Amazon stock's up $36. Usually the acquirer stock falls. That says people are betting that this is going to be maybe not accretive, but it's going to be a big growth element for Amazon. Very unusual. But next one I have, Charles, is showing the checkout capabilities on the stores. And I don't think there's anybody listening that says, yeah, I've seen scanners for years, and I'm seeing the checkout scanners over at Home Depot, et cetera. But that's here now, but it's going to be obsolete. You're not even going to be scanned pretty soon, or going through a checkout. You're going to be walking down the aisles, and they know who you are. And whether it's through facial recognition or when you walk into a store, you just barcode it yourself in, you pick up whatever you want and you'll walk out of the store and without ever going through a check, and your card will be automatically debited. Because well, for starters, they're monitoring everybody anyway for security because of theft that's going on. So it's really integrating the whole security complex for them. And I've seen some of the stores. It's unbelievable, the security that you don't see in a central control center, not in that store, monitoring hundreds of stores. But the advances that's going to happen there. Just think what happens, the convenience that is, the size of the store that will change. You can get rid of that whole checkout part of it that's there. The next area is as we were just talking about, delivery systems, and everybody's talking about drones, but these are real applications that are happening, and these drone systems, it's going to be almost like central command for the United States flying our drones, Charles, where you'll have a person managing 15 to 25 drones all at the same time. They will pick the item up from the local delivery center that Amazon has, but all they do is they just simply lift them in the air. They load the GPS coordinates on it. It goes to the location it wants delivered. Meanwhile, they can handle all sorts of drones concurrently, and there'll be computer assisted and artificial intelligence to do that. All they've got to then do is actually do the landing, put it on the doorstep or wherever it wants, the last decision making, lift it up, hit the return GPS, and bang, they go. So, and even with air traffic control starting to shift because of its drone capabilities, you can see what's coming. Comments there?
Well, Gordon, that's an excellent example of one of the aspects we were discussing about Amazon's dominance is there's a tremendous amount of software built into these automated systems. And in other words, it seems seamless to us, but that's the hard part, as you well know, in creating software systems, is to make it seamless for the customer and for the process. But meanwhile, there's a huge amount of complexity and cost in creating that automation. And so this is where we see Mark Andreessen, who's famous for starting the Mosaic browser, right? And he's now a VC, that his famous phrase is software is eating the world. And that's true, and it's eating jobs. And there's a lot of people who are in denial about this. They think that we can shift 5 million people out of retail into coding. But the sticky point here is coding itself is being automated. And if you speak to anybody young that's entering the field, they're taking just big chunks of code, right, and assembling these basically, components. And so you don't have to write the whole thing from scratch. And there's a lot of coding that's being automated in terms of cleaning up legacy languages and translating them into modern languages and that kind of stuff. So there's no way, and there's statistical proof of this. The software industry is basically stable. It hasn't added 500,000 jobs in the last decade. And it's because it's being automated too.
Exactly. So the question is, everything we're seeing so far are jobs that are disappearing. But in a positive note, where are the new jobs? And yes, all of these new technologies add some jobs, but the net loss is getting larger and larger. For the number that are added because of the new change, let's say servicing drones and everything has capability versus how many jobs, that's the problem. And it's a massive issue. The World Bank is suggesting that we need to create globally 600 million jobs in the next 10 years. And that's without factoring in robotics, because they simply can't guess at what that means. So let's be conservative and say it's 1 billion jobs. Where exactly do we create 1 billion jobs, Charles? And those aren't my numbers, and it may be even larger. So we have no answers to it. We may have answers for 5,000 or 10,000, and President Trump's even found some answers for 100,000 jobs. That's the problem now, is hundreds of millions of jobs. That's our problem. And put a fine point on this. Here's a chart, Charles. 1978 by state what the dominant job was in each of the states. And you can go through and you can see farmers are clearly there, secretaries are clearly there. Now we go to just not even well, before robotics is hitting, but 2014, and you notice truck drivers, and that could be also delivery drivers, courier drivers, people working behind the wheel of a car, truck, or even doing local services around. They're driving they're driving a lot of these vans and taking a couple people on them. Furniture delivery trucks is an example that I see here right in this particular office complex I'm in. So if that's where it's going, what about all the self-driving materials, technology that's coming? I'm showing here, this is something that's being put together by Audi and Mercedes, self-driving trucks. This is not in the future. This is here today, but now it's just trying to roll it out and make sure that on a regulatory basis, because I know in California there's been some accidents from self-driving vehicles, but that'll quickly get behind it. And just think how many truck drivers potentially. Where also, the self-driving cars are not in the future. They're here today, and this, so I got a diagram here of some of the capabilities. Even the average person buying a car today, a lot of the safety features that people are buying is it's checking your distance from somebody on the right. If you go to your shoulder, following too closely, these are becoming, I won't call standard issues, but they're options that are in cars to buy. The next step to automatic driving is there, and just think what that's going to do to employment. Comments, Charles?
Right. Well, Gordon, your maps there of truck drivers and the staffing that we used to call secretaries and now we call administrative assistants. My observation is all jobs in the future, not all, but many of jobs of the future will not be those that have not been eliminated by automation will require the human employee to work at a much higher level in a more integrated fashion with technology. And this is across the entire spectrum of jobs. In other words, the admin assistant has a much higher demands and much higher skill sets to perform multiple functions for multiple people in the office, right? Where they're in terms of like say a surgeon, now there's more surgical tools that embody technologies that aid the surgeon, right? And it's sort of in a similar analogy would be the way that commercial aircraft mostly fly themselves, right? The pilot's there in case systems fail and he actually has to take over, or he or she. But that's the future of work, is much higher skill sets and much more integration with automation, robotics, and these AI type tools. Wherever you are in the spectrum, from the highest level to entry-level jobs, is much more demanded of people.
That's a very good point. It's all levels. And the higher you are going to be using the technology as an integrated part. You're looking at a surgery that's going on. He looks like he's a space cadet. Goes over his eyes because he can't see to the degree he needs to see. We're leading to, and we've mentioned, Charles, is this chart here that's showing that we're accelerating more jobs. It's a net loss in chronic unemployment, and it's the second is going to, and we haven't seen yet this net out factories. The lights are off. It's fully automated. There's no need to get worse, and it advanced so quickly when women.
Right. Well, Gordon, I want to bring up a couple of issues that I've written about fairly extensively. Is that one is was the reason why economist Michael Spence was given the Nobel Prize in economics, is the difference between tradable and untradable labor. And so tradable, of course, is some electronic component or that's made elsewhere, overseas and shipped here, right? We know that's offshoring or whatever term, globalization. And then there's having your hair cut. That you can't really get that shipped to China. You can go physically to China and get your hair cut, but there's a lot of expense there, right? So there's untradable stuff stays here. That's why we've seen an expansion of employment in fields like education and medical care. In other words, you can play medical tourist if you're well. You can fly to Thailand and have a procedure done much cheaper. But if you're already ill, you're going to need care, here in your local area. So my point here is that a lot of work is untradable, right? Like in other words, I need a yard maintenance person. That can't be offshored. I need a human being or a robot or somebody to mow my lawn and trim my plants and all that. Then we come to the issue of high touch, low touch. And what that means is we will pay a premium for high touch labor where the human contact is a big part of it. And and examples of this are no to be served a fast food meal because that's a low touch transaction, right? But part of why we spend extra money on a sit down meal at a fancy bistro is we want to interact with the other guests, the other diners. We want a knowledgeable waiter, waitress, that kind of thing. And imagine if we get a haircutting robot. You can we'll pay $5 for a robot to put a helmet over your head and then But a lot of people go to get a haircut. They actually want a human contact, right? They enjoy that whole experience, and maybe they'll pay $10. In other words, they'll pay extra to be served by a human. And so, but there's a lot of things that we won't pay extra to be served by a human. And so that's really what we're talking about is this vast service industry we have now where all the low touch service jobs are going to be eliminated because no consumer is going to pay extra to be served by a human. And say, for instance, fast food or low tech kinds of retail situations. We just as soon hit a button instead of looking for a salesperson. We'd rather just do it automatically, right? And have it delivered and so much easier and quicker. So we're not going to pay extra to find a human being and chat with them and all that. But there will be still other jobs where we want a human connection and we'll pay extra for that. But that's a relatively small circle of the whole economy, which, as you say, there's 150 million people in the labor force and about 125 million have some sort of job. And how many of those are high touch? Not that many. I'd like to add 2 points. One is the universal basic income. To be affordable, it's actually subsistence. It's not like you're going to have money for nice vacations or anything. That's just too expensive. And the ones that we've seen in practice, say in Finland and some test things in the UK, they're on the order of $560 a month. In other words, really bare bones. And even if you said it was 1,000, well, with prices and costs going up, that's basically subsistence, right? So, and a lot of people see this as not like a helping hand. It's not some sort of generosity. It's simply giving the consumers enough money that they can consume the products that are being produced. In other words, we have no demand as people lose their paid livelihoods. So we have to provide them money so they can provide the demand to keep the economy. But come from, and various estimates, if we instituted subsistence, universal basic income in the U.S. today, it's between $1 trillion and $2 trillion extra on top of the half a trillion structural deficit we're already running. So where's the money going to come from? And supporters of universal basic income say, well, we're going to tax the robots. And what they fail to understand about technology is the tools of automation and robotics are themselves becoming commoditized. In other words, they're either free or they're nearly free, or that there's no pricing power anymore if somebody else can buy the same robot at the same price. Where is your scarcity value there if you're simply using the same tools as somebody else? Guess what? Profits plummet. They don't increase. They plummet because value goes to scarcity. So, I think you're right. We will see some sort of universal basic income. It will be subsistence. It's not going to give people, the life they want. That's the sad part. It's just going to keep them alive, and they'll have enough money to pay their cable bill and buy food, but not much else, right? And so it's going to still fall back on us and our communities and and our ingenuity to create real value and have a life worth living. You know, subsistence, I don't think that's the American dream or the Chinese dream or the French dream. Nobody dreams of just getting by for the rest of their lives. And that's the problem with universal basic income. That's all that we can afford. It's just enough to scrape by. And I wrote this book called A Radically Beneficial World, where I address this specifically, like how do we deal with automation? And I propose we need a whole third economy, you know, that I call the community economy. You can't rely on the global marketplace, and you can't rely on the government, because those two depend on each other, right? I mean, the government gets taxes from wages and profits, and if there are no wages, or wages and profits decline, the government's stuck too. So we need a whole new approach, really, to providing work and paid work. And that book is my proposal of how to do that. And even if you disagree with the book, well, then we have to come up with something similar. You can't just say, well, let's go back. We can't go back. And we all know that. If there was an easy answer, we'd already be pursuing it. If it was something as easy as universal basic income, it'd already be done. If it was something like just cut tax rates or some kind of old conventional policy, if that really worked and was magical, it would already have done its magic. But there are no easy solutions. And so we're really going to have to look to new structures, if you will, of society and the economy. Just rehashing the old stuff that worked 40 years ago, if it still worked, we wouldn't be in a stagnant economy right now. So it doesn't work. We're going to have to look to completely new structures, and we have the technology to do so. So I see a bright future, but only if we look ahead instead.